Welcome to Young Turks, India's longest-running show on startups and entrepreneurship. I'm Shereen Bhan. To talk about the importance of expanding the geriatric care space in India, I'm now joined by Tara Singh Vachani, the founder of Tara Senior Care, Saumyajit Roy, co-founder of Imoha Elder Care, and Neil Dsouza, the co-founder of Get Set Up. Tara, Saumyajit, and Neil, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC-TV18's Young Turks. You know, for years, we have talked about India's demographic advantage, India's demographic dividend. The focus has been on the young population, the young workforce, and somehow there hasn't been much attention on another very important aspect and reality that we need to deal with, and that is geriatric care. It's also a population that's getting older. And, you know, three of you are perhaps a handful of entrepreneurs in India who are trying to address this space, the silver economy, the geriatric care economy. Tara, let me start by asking you, when you set up Antara Senior Living, and of course now Antara is also looking at assisted care services, wholly owned subsidiaries of Max India. What was the thought process from setting up your first senior residential community in Dehradun, you know, with 180 apartments? You're now looking at setting up in Noida, and that's almost double of what you started with in Dehradun. What have been the challenges?
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be the senior most of this panel. We've been at this for 10 years now, slow and steady. And I think we're building this whole concept brick by brick, Shereen, because it is that serious and that important. And essentially, when we started 10 years ago, it was with a vision, and Saumyajit on the panel was part of that dream as part of the Antara team back then. So he knows what I'm referring to. But essentially, it was a dream to impact quality of life for the aging population. Up until us, I think we were have been the lone wolves in this for quite a while. But the idea was that can we find ecosystems, products, and services that take the aging process of seniors to be efficient, progressive, joyful, and happy. And therefore, in that journey, we started with the one residential community in Dehradun. And in 2019, we actually expanded to 3 brand new verticals other than the residences vertical. So not only are we expanding the residences vertical by putting a community in Noida and other parts of NCR and probably other parts of India by next year, but we decided we also had to take from lifestyle all the way up to life care. And the new verticals address essentially that. So there are care homes that deal with pre-op, post-op care, 24/7 medium or short-term care for seniors, home care, as well as medical products. And I think the biggest challenges for us have been 3. One, with really changing the mindset of both the primary and secondary audience to understand that investing in a quality of life as you get older is mission critical. 2, it's been influencing policy and government to understand and recognize this as a sector. And 3 has been probably the ability for people to pay, because insurance ecosystems are not influencing senior care and senior spends. But we're seeing this shift, and we're seeing the narrative change. So it's very exciting at the moment.
Saumyajit, let's talk about your journey and what you're attempting to do and address through Imoha Elder Care.
I think it's more personal. I think it started with my own mom, my own dad, and seeing the struggles that India's elders face, you know, over the years, and how they're able to manage it from the comfort of their own home. And the word Imoha goes into exactly that. If you turn around the word Imoha, it's a home, and it's the acceptance that India's elders, unlike a lot that has happened in the world, would want to stay in their own home. 99% of India's elders want to stay in their own home. That's what you want to go when you are not well, or you're in a fancy house in Florida. You would finally want to go back to your own home. So how do we stitch, you know, all the services that you would otherwise get in a beautiful, you know, facility, beautiful, you know, continuing care retirement community worldwide? How can you deconstruct all those things and be able to stream it into your own home is what Imoha started to build towards. And therefore, whether it is emergency 24/7 support, where today we save more than 350 lives, or it is doing engagement and events using the Imoha app, where we've done more than 3,000 programs now. But I think more importantly, Shereen, the thing is about how does this, what seems as a challenge, come out as an opportunity? Because that is really the thing between the work that is being done across all large elder care companies in the country. The opportunity is to look at a 40,000, 50,000 crore market where we can make an impact and a difference in the quality of life, as Tara said. That is really the driving factor.
Yes, and that's absolutely, and that's what I want to dig a little deeper into, that, what is that opportunity, and more importantly, what will be the different pieces of that opportunity, because each of you are addressing different segments, different categories, different needs within that large market. In fact, Neil is doing something completely different from what Tara and you are doing, Saumyajit. So let me get Neil into the conversation. Neil, talk to us about Get Set Up and what you're attempting to do.
Yeah, thanks, Shereen. So yeah, Get Set Up is, just over 2 years old. And while I was looking at your introductory segment, I'm one of those kids who abandoned my parents in Goa and have moved to the US. And, felt like, how do I take care of them so that they can live happy, healthy, productive lives as they are aging in? And what I realized is, there are two categories, right? There's aging in, where people like my parents who are turning 60, 65 are so-called retired, but they are feeling active. They want to learn, they want to meet new people, they want to follow their passions, because they didn't have that opportunity growing up because of the Indian education system and how we grew up in our society. So I was like, what if we create a platform for them to pursue their hobbies and passion? And if they do that, it will increase their mental enrichment. It will increase their physical health. It will also help them connect with new people, so reduce loneliness. But also, they can come on the platform and teach and make some extra money. And so, really, the problem that we were trying to solve was, how do we help the 60 to 70-year-old live longer so that their, insurance doesn't cover and our health system doesn't cover a lot of the challenges in elder care. If we do something more preventative, we can actually extend the aging process and also reduce the cost of care. So that's kind of what Get Set Up is. It's a learning platform. We have over 2 million people in India who have taken classes in the last 2 years. And they do everything from yoga together. They're doing discussion groups. They're playing games online. They're also doing things in person now, where they're going to concerts and they're going on cruises. So it's really allowing this generation to pursue their passions where they didn't have their opportunity, and thus living healthy lives.
And Tara, I want to come back to you now to address the issue of how do we replicate some of these models. Let's start by talking about yours. One, of course, is the assisted living model that you are now looking at. And of course, then you've got the senior senior living communities that you're setting up. How do you make it accessible? How do you make it more affordable? What will need to change so that more people can avail of these services?
So Shereen, I think first of all, more people like Saumyajit and Neil need to join hands. I mean, I could think of 3 things that Neil and I and Antara and Get Set Up could do together, and that in itself will have to have a multiplier effect. So Neil, please expect a phone call from me after this. The senior living bit, the residences bit, we have been able to scale up by doing joint development models with landowners who understand that there is a premium financially for them if they partner with unique niche boutique concepts like us. And the government's been, supportive in creating policies around building norms and making it easier for us to create communities. Because the fact is that while the world is going digital, and I believe in that as being a huge part of what any industry or category is, the physical proximity of human beings to one another will continue to be the clincher in aging positively and well. And that is why we believe at the fulcrum of everything we do, some level of physical manifestation of spaces and ecosystems have to exist.
Saumyajit, both of you, Tara, Neil, and yourself, you've all spoken about this being a $15 to $20 billion market opportunity. So Saumyajit, I want to understand from you, are you now starting to see more investor interest coming in? Because all of these plans are also going to require funding, especially when we talk about scale. So, is that starting to happen? Are you starting to see investors buy into this story, into this opportunity? And secondly, talked about demand, and that's very clear from what each one of you has said. But on the supply side, especially when we talk about appropriately trained manpower, etc., how challenging is that going to be to build scale?
Oh, Shireen, we just came out of a pre-Series B round, about 2 months back, and despite what was happening across the world, I think we feel very grateful and very privileged to our investors that we successfully closed it, and in fact, we got oversubscribed. We've now gone into a Series B, so I've been interacting with a lot of investors in India and abroad, and I think the interest is very high because the world recognizes the need for solutions in the aged care segment. The world recognizes that this is probably the biggest blind spot, not just for the industry, but for also the tech industry. Emoha is extremely tech oriented. The backend is very tech heavy. There is a whole approach towards creating a digital first solution, but also a care first and an elders first solution. So investors get it. Investors understand that this is, even if it is a 2,000 rupees per customer ARPU, we are talking of with just 1 million people on the app, it's a 24,000 crore market. When you add the full continuum of care within the Emoha platform, we now have the Epoch Care Homes who operate at close to about $1,600 per month. So if you look at the full continuum, investors understand that this is a very large segment, exactly as Tara mentioned about going to about a $15 billion opportunity. So investors understand it, but I think there is a little bit of a watch and wait that is happening, which is in some ways going to keep all the players in the industry there, that you need to keep your focus, you need to keep your eye on margins, you need to keep your eyes on customer acquisition cost, on how you are scaling it up, and at every incremental zone, how the whole cost of expansion, cost of delivery is becoming better. So I think the global investor base as well as the India investor base has started to show a lot of interest. There are a lot of single HNI investors who are putting in money, which is a great indicator, despite market conditions. I think the demand side is something that is seeing increasingly an opening up. So whether it is different parts of the country where individuals are recognizing that elder care cannot be anymore a point which is ignored. A lot of blind spots in NRIs, for example, have opened up after the COVID period, where they've realized that they can't afford to just have their parents vulnerable in some part of the country. Corporates, insurance people, bank people have understood, who are now partnering with organizations like us, that there is some part of the care play that we can have an active role. To your third point about supply, I think there is innovations that is at play. Again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There is possibilities for utilizing a lot of talent which is there in the neighborhood. Part of the talent could be the elder itself. We have elders from 55 going up till 75, 80, who are very active, who are talented, who have time. And exactly as Neil was mentioning in what Get Set Up is doing, and brilliant work by Neil, there is possibilities of many of such kind of people being brought into the fold of routine employment for taking care of elders itself. So whether it's young people who are available, but maybe in alternate professions as gig economy, or it is elders, I think there's a full spectrum of supply also available, which can be leveraged. But it requires a lot of innovative deployment, with technology stitching the whole thing together.
Yeah, I would imagine that you need to bring all stakeholders together and really have that ecosystem impact. But Neil, you said you've been in business now for the last 2 years. Take me through what the plans are now as far as expanding this offering is concerned, taking it to more people.
Yeah, so we actually started in the US just 2 years ago, but have scaled to India and several other markets. What we're seeing very interesting, as we all know, is there are Indians living all over the world. We are such a big population. And so we're seeing the diaspora from all over the world actually come onto the platform and wanting to actually connect with their roots and do things with people. So we are starting to now grow from online, because our online offering has scaled quite a bit, is to take that to the next level where people want to meet in person. Like my example, like my mom, who's in Goa, met some 50 strangers who she only met online on Get Set Up and flew to a Get Set Up concert with her singing teacher, right? And so we're seeing that desire that they connected online, but they want to do activities together and now go on holidays together with people they met. And so I think what we are doing at Get Set Up in India is actually expanding to actually follow what the customers want, because those were the opportunities they missed. And so we are doing offline events. We are leveraging, I think, underutilized assets. So if you think about coffee shops, you think about gyms that are running empty in the afternoons. Like, how do we take our online fitness classes and offer it in partnership with them in the physical world? Same with financial institutions that are, they've realized that our platform has about 86% of women who have traditionally been out of the financial literacy space. Like, usually the husbands take care of all the finances, but we're seeing women on our platform being so inquisitive. So we're having banks and pension funds in India actually approach us to run more financial literacy programs, funding some businesses that are coming from these women. So it's very exciting to see the online community that was built over the last 2 years and really taking it to the offline world to actually help them accomplish some of the goals that they had as they're aging.
Well, the next time you're organizing a concert, let me know, Neil. I would love to be part of that as well. But Tara, I want to come back to you and address the issue that Saumya and Neil both spoke about, building partnerships. And I would imagine that given the opportunity that you speak of, as well as the mindset change that you alluded to at the start of the program, are you now starting to see this become something that corporates, for instance, are thinking of as part of an incentive, as part of how they treat their executives and so on and so forth? Or banks, what's the sort of ecosystem impact that you're seeing as you've seen mindsets change individually as well as at the enterprise level?
No, definitely, Shereen. We're seeing, we're seeing the whole investor space change hugely. And the minute the investor space starts changing, people in general start waking up to a sector. So that's been a great shift that we have also seen. Partnerships, of course, given that aging is so linked to healthcare to begin with, there are healthcare partnerships that are integral to the existence of any senior care offering. So we are seeing our partnerships with healthcare partners deepening both ways, because it's an audience that doesn't need to be hospitalized. And therefore, we're even seeing hospitals partner with us and say, take over some of the care and we'll do the clinical bits, which is something they are very good at. So that's a big partnership model that we're starting to see. To corporates, I would say the conversations are starting. I haven't seen much translate, and it was a pool that we talked a lot to in the early days of Antara in Dehradun, but then we saw that the buying and the consumer behavior was very sort of end-to-end or B2C in that sense. But at some point, at least the care homes and the home care bit, the minute insurance starts linking up more strongly, corporates will have to start looking at this as somewhat retirement benefits. And I think the shift is on the anvil. And lastly, banks, etc. I think given that so much of this $15 to $20 billion pool is in financial services, they are starting to change products around. And we're seeing that both insurance, life insurance, ULIP plans, as well as traditional banking is starting to adjust slowly to understand that this consumer and demography needs special attention. I think we're a few years away from these partnerships actually taking shape, but I do see a lot of potential partnerships within people in the senior care space, like I already mentioned. And I think that will be very exciting for us and to see how the multiplier effect can kick in.
So, Tara, what should we expect in terms of the next set of targets that you've set for yourself? You talked about the Noida community that's going to be up and running by 2025. What else is on the cards?
So we're actually getting into what I'm calling version 3.0 of Antara. And there's a lot of scale up that we are envisioning because it's a very exciting time for us. So when we look at our residences vertical, our second project is already well on its way to getting operationalized. We want to have at least 5 to 7 more residential communities in the coming 3 to 5 years. In the vertical of care homes, we see ourselves going from a current 100 beds to about 2,000 beds and spreading outside of the NCR. We want to continue to grow the home care business as almost an ancillary service to these. And we are actually in an exciting juncture where we're looking at other adjacent opportunities that can also help us scale up and give us sort of a fair amount and uplift in revenues now that we're being able to see the proof points of all of our business models. So we're sort of at the start of a very exciting phase 3, as we call it.
Okay, so 3.0, that's the journey that you're starting. But Saumyajit, if I were to ask you for a wish list to leave us with, we've all spoken about the opportunity that exists, but if there was a wish list in terms of the changes that you believe need to be made, both at a policy level, at the level of government intervention to enable and facilitate the growth of this space, anything in specific that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, so I think the one must definitely acknowledge the fact that the last 2 years, particularly, there's a lot of activity that has happened by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. The current secretary has been extremely active, Subramaniam, for making, together a lot of policy changes. But I think the one policy shift that is very important is to be able to have organizations which are in the senior care space, benefit from the kind of services they are able to do and pass on benefits to the end consumers, particularly in matters related to GST, or how we can reduce the burden that they already have. Elders across the country, as we know, they have high assets but low cash. They don't have a running income. So adding to their expenditure is not a great idea, and therefore being able to have expenditure related benefits come to them by virtue of lower tax or GST, something which is a very important aspect. Two, I think from a policy standpoint, being able to help partnerships and able to help organizations who want to do public-private partnerships across the country, whether it's in the form of senior living or assets that Tara talked about. I think it's a very important thing because across the country there is a lot of communities and assets which are there. If such kind of assets could be shared, it could be a massive advantage. We are doing a lot of programs now in Gurgaon where we are trying to see how Gurgaon can become pretty much like an elders first destination for the country. And these will require government and private sector to work very closely together. So recognizing that elders itself is a large opportunity, they are an unutilized, a great cohort that can benefit government and private sectors. I think these are small things that can play a big role from a policy standpoint.
Well, Tara, Saumyajit and Neil, thanks so much for joining us here on this special edition of Young Turks to talk about the opportunities that exist in the geriatric care space, and more importantly, the kind of products and services that will be required to ensure that as we age, we also age with dignity and joy. Tara, Saumyajit and Neil, we wish the three of you the very best of luck. Thanks so much for joining us here on Young Turks. We'll take a break. There's a lot more coming up on CNBC-TV18. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a minute with more.